Physiology of breathing and respiration. Breathing. Respiratory organ in man is the lungs. Lungs are enclosed by a double-layered membrane called pleura. Pleural fluid is filled between pleural membranes. Pleural fluid acts as a lubricant between membranes to avoid friction. The thoracic cavity is airtight. The human lungs act as a suction pump. Expiration and inspiration occurs regularly at a fixed rate in breathing. Thoracic cage and diaphragm is involved in breathing. Thoracic cage is composed of vertebral column on dorsal side, sternum on ventral side. The ribs are connected with one another to two kinds of oblique muscles: internal and external intercostal muscles. The diaphragm is convexed towards thorax like a dome. Several radial skeletal muscles originating from posterior ribs, sternum, thoracic vertebrae, and abdominal wall converge towards the diaphragm and insert upon its central tendon. Inspiration. During inspiration, the volume of thoracic cavity and lungs increase by contraction of intercostal muscles which pull the ribs upward. Contraction of muscles of diaphragm which causes flattening of dome-shaped diaphragm. The air pressure in the lungs decreases and air rushes into the lungs. Expiration. During expiration, volume of pleural cavity decreases by relaxation of intercostal muscles, pushing the ribs inward. Due to relaxation of radial muscles, flattened diaphragm becomes dome-shaped. This presses the lungs and air goes out. Difference between inhalation and exhalation. In inhalation, intercostal muscles of the ribs contract, pulling the ribs and sternum upwards and outwards. During exhalation, intercostal muscles of the ribs relax, allowing the ribs and the sternum to return to their original position. The diaphragm contracts in inhalation and is pulled down and flattened. During exhalation, the diaphragm relaxes and is pushed back to its original dome-like position by the abdominal organs. During inhalation, volume inside the thorax increases. During exhalation, volume inside the thorax decreases. Intrathoracic pressure of the lungs is decreased in inhalation and outside air rich in oxygen rushes in through the nostrils. Intrathoracic pressure of the lungs is increased during exhalation and the inside air rich in carbon dioxide and water vapor is forced out through the nostrils. Respiration. Two steps are involved in the process of respiration. They are gaseous exchange in lungs and cellular respiration. Gaseous exchange in lungs. Exchange of gases in the lungs mainly takes place by the process of diffusion. The concentration of oxygen is higher in the inhaled air than in the venous blood present in the alveolar capillaries. Therefore, oxygen diffuses from the alveoli into the blood in the capillaries. As a result, carbon dioxide from capillaries diffuses from the blood vessels into the alveoli. This is how exchange of gases takes place in human beings. Cellular respiration. In this, there is uptake of oxygen by the cells from the blood where oxidation of food takes place and carbon dioxide is released. Human cellular respiration can be divided into two main phases: glycolysis, anaerobic phase; Krebs cycle, aerobic phase. Glycolysis or EMP pathway. Three scientists, namely Emden, Meyerhoff and Parnas, worked out glycolysis and thus named EMP pathway. This phase consists of series of chemical reactions taking place in the cytoplasm of the cell with the help of various enzymes. To carry out these reactions, no oxygen is required. That is why it is called anaerobic phase. In this process, glucose, which is a 6-carbon compound, undergoes a series of chemical reactions and finally gets degraded to 2 molecules of 3-carbon compound, pyruvic acid. In these reactions, various enzymes are used. Whole process of glycolysis of 1 molecule of glucose finally leads to the formation of 8 ATP molecules. Degradation of glucose up to pyruvic acid formation is same in both types of respiration, that is aerobic and anaerobic. In the presence of oxygen, 2 pyruvic acid molecules formed after glycolysis enter the Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle. It takes place inside mitochondria present in the cells in the presence of oxygen. 2 molecules of pyruvic acid undergo series of chemical reactions by the action of enzymes and finally release 30 ATP molecules. Krebs cycle is also known as citric acid cycle or TCA cycle. It mainly involves oxidation of pyruvic acid by means of a cycle involving different organic acids. Thus, complete oxidation of 1 molecule of glucose forms 38 ATP molecules. Glycolysis, 8 ATPs formed. Krebs cycle, 30 ATPs formed. Total 38 ATPs. Temporary anaerobic respiration. Due to less or non-availability of oxygen, pyruvic acid molecules formed after glycolysis instead of entering Krebs cycle reduce to lactic acid. Lactic acid formation leads to muscle fatigue. This mainly occurs during the course of exercise. After relaxation, when sufficient amount of oxygen is available, pyruvic acid molecules enter the Krebs cycle.